To kick off our afternoon sessions, I would like to welcome my boss, and the person who really made all of this possible is the Chief Policy Officer of Coinbase, Faryar Shirzad.
And I'll just be on for a couple of minutes, but I wanted to thank everybody for being a part of this event. I want to congratulate Paul and the Coinbase Institute, together with the folks at Project Glitch, for putting this event together. You know, for all of us who are involved in policy issues or in crypto, we spend an inordinate amount of time focusing on kind of the issue of the moment, which is the regulation of crypto exchanges and the issuance of stable coins, and you've all sort of seen all the twists and turns and the energy being spent to try to get legislation done. And a lot of us are hopeful that we'll make progress with that, and that this election will end up being the kind of the biggest crypto election we've ever had, and a much better crypto Congress next year, and all those things that we hope for. But events like this help remind us that the reason we've all gotten into the space is because of the potential of a decentralized, democratized world, essentially a value layer to the internet that fulfills the promise of what the internet was intended to do, which is to create a much more democratized system. But on the way there's some very hard issues that get resolved, and probably at the center of that, there's nothing more important than privacy. And so when Paul came up with the idea of having a privacy summit, we were all very excited about it, because we need to have exactly this kind of discussion. And some of it turns on some of the policy things we talk about what the solutions are. But the real ultimate enduring and resilient solution to getting policy right on the privacy space is the innovators that have been a part of this day to day to talk about the applications that they're building, the solutions to real life applications that once they're explained, people are intuit quickly and understand that this is really an enhancement to the status quo and something we need to protect. And in the course of protecting it, sort of recenter ourselves in terms of our assumptions about what the presumptions are regarding privacy, government surveillance, all those hard issues that we've sort of hard baked into a place that merits some challenge and reassessment. Just like the Zcash discussion did earlier. I think things like that are really important to force us to recenter in important ways. So we're really proud of what the Institute and Paul have done today. We're going to do a lot more of these sort of discussions through the Institute, where we essentially take a bit of a different angle, look at a little bit of a longer horizon as to what the issues are, and then bring the community in a way that helps explain kind of what's at stake, why it's important, why we all need to kind of reset our thinking a bit, and why there's a potential for a really exciting future in front of us. I'm particularly proud of Paul's the diversity of voices that he's brought here, and I think we're really lucky to have Carol House from the White House and friends from Congress and others who are going to be a part of this discussion today. And so I think the goodwill that shows just by participating in this is really exciting. So we appreciate you all being here. Now, my formal job was to introduce the next panel. Coinbase obviously is a stakeholder in its own right on the issue of privacy, and we obviously have very important and complex protocols and policies around how we approach privacy. And so what we've arranged is what's going to be a really good discussion on privacy with two of our senior privacy folks who are going to be a part of a discussion that's going to happen right after this. So I'll sort of turn the stage over to them and to Paul, and thank you all for being a part of this discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Faryar. Again, thanks for investing in this event, and thanks to my employer, Coinbase, for being so supportive and having actually some of our most important team members here. Asha is here. Asha Shankar is here. She is the senior manager of Coinbase's privacy program. And on Zoom, and we can bring that up, please, we have Shashank Agarwal. He's the blockchain security research engineering manager at Coinbase. And he would love to be here in person, but actually his team and the entire security team at Coinbase are having an offsite meeting. I had to pull Asha out of it, so I'm very thankful that she was able to come and be here with us in person. And Shashank, thank you for joining us on Zoom. And I would like to also say that we're very fortunate to have Casey Wagner, senior reporter at BlockWorks, to facilitate this discussion. So Asha, Casey, please come up.
Hello.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and thank you to Coinbase. I'm excited to be here. When Mike and Paul first mentioned this panel to me, I was really excited. I feel like with Coinbase, everyone's aware of the KYC privacy situation, but when we think about Coinbase's privacy team, I feel like that's something that we really don't talk about as much. So I'd like to kind of start with an introduction. Asha, maybe you can go first. What are your teams working on? What does your day-to-day look like? What can you kind of tell us about this privacy department at Coinbase?
Thanks, Casey. Everyone, my name is Asha Shankar. I lead privacy for Coinbase. Among the number of things that I do, one is just working with a legal team to understand various privacy regulations out there and ensuring that the products and services that Coinbase releases are being compliant with those. Interestingly, a lot of privacy regulations that are there today, whether it is CPRA, CCPA, state regulations like DC, Colorado, or even international regulations like GDPR, are very Web 2 centric. So it's almost like fitting a round peg in a square hole. So we have to constantly kind of figure out what that means for a company like Coinbase. So that's one of the key challenges that we are running into today.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to get into some of these key differences between Web 2 and Web 3. Shashank, can you start with an introduction?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but I'm really excited to be part of this. I'm part of the blockchain security team here at Coinbase, and we do a number of things. We are responsible for all the on-chain development that happens at Coinbase. So in particular, the security of the base blockchain, security of the products, on-chain products that we are building here, smart wallets, base names. And we also have assets that we list on the exchange. So we want to do that in a secure manner. Then we have the off-chain side of blockchain, where we have wallets, node services, staking services. So we want them to be secure as well. So like there's a big variety of things that that my team works on.
Great. Asha, I wanted to start with you. When thinking about privacy on Web3, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you think exist in the space? And I'm also curious if you can tell us about the current regulatory environment. Are there regulations that guard what can be on chain in terms of data?
Yeah, the very basic nature of blockchain, the immutability and transparency really requires us to rethink how the traditional privacy requirements have to be evaluated on chain. Let me just take a few examples. Right to deletion. And what is right to deletion? Essentially, if a company is processing a customer's personal data, a customer can reach out to the company and say, hey, I want you to delete the data that you have about me. In your traditional Web 2 environment, you can hard delete data or you can apply access controls, but in Web 3, that's really not feasible. Similarly, retention. What is retention? Retention is another requirement from various privacy regulations where we are ensuring that we're only keeping the data for a relevant time period. And it changes. Like example, compliance data is something that's retained for a longer period compared to a marketing data. In Web 2, that can be easily implemented, saying, hey, based on the data used, you can apply retention policies. That changes when you look at Web 3. Or another example is transparency or purpose limitation. Transparency, I would say, in Web 2, once a customer has provided their data to a company, they have less visibility into where the data is stored, so on and so forth, versus blockchain offers more transparency in where their data exists, what data exists. On the other hand, purpose limitation is a right that customers have where essentially companies have to ensure that if there's data that's being gathered for a specific purpose, like say for KYC, is only being used for KYC, can be used for marketing. It is easier to enforce that in Web 2, but on blockchain, once the data is there on the chain, it can be used for anything and by anyone. So these traditional privacy concepts really have to be revisited for blockchain. Unfortunately, we have to still adhere to being a financial institution. Coinbase has to adhere to these privacy principles, which, as I said, is very Web 2 centric.
You mentioned personal data. How do you determine? So personal data is subject to regulation when it's on chain. How do you determine what is personal data? Can you give some examples?
The most obvious ones are like name, email address, social security numbers. But there are some non-obvious ones too, like even wallet address, if you are able to associate that to a user, becomes a personal data. IP addresses, device ID. So these are all things that on the first go, you might think that it's not personal data, but by means of association becomes personal, and hence privacy regulations become applicable for them.
Definitely. Shashank, I want to bring you in. When we're thinking about how to enhance on-chain privacy, how are you thinking about it? How is Coinbase thinking about it? What options exist? What challenges are there?
Yeah. On-chain privacy is a complex problem, and maybe I'll make some high-level points and then talk in a bit more detail. So we know that blockchains are like, by design, they're public. All transaction data, state data, everything is public. And when we think about hiding things, providing privacy for users, what exactly should we hide? On one end, we have simple things like you could hide user balance, you could hide user identity, but you could also hide smart contract code, the state of contracts, or a combination of these things, right? And the more you try to hide, the more complex and expensive the solution becomes. And there's also the question of interoperability, interoperability within the contract of a blockchain and interoperability with other chains. So for instance, if we have an encrypted asset, would it still be possible to use it with existing DeFi protocols? Likely not, right? So that's why privacy is hard on chain, and we can try to solve privacy. We have various options to like bring privacy into blockchain at various levels. For example, we could do something at the wallet level. We could maybe consider generating stealth addresses, but at the same time, smart wallets, they're really popular these days, and they're kind of picking up really. In smart wallets, the secret keys are device bound. You can only do a very small set of operations on the secret key, really only sign transactions with the secret key. But to implement something like stealth addresses, you may want to do more with the secret key, right? Which is not directly possible. Another option is do something at the protocol level, like maybe have shielded transactions, private contract execution, or something else of that sort. But that might require, if you have an existing blockchain, you might have to significantly redesign the blockchain for that to work. And at that point, you might even consider rolling out a new chain altogether. But that would have its own challenges. Where would the liquidity come from? How would you bridge funds to that chain, bridge funds out of that chain, stuff like that. And lastly, you could also consider doing something at the application level, at the dApp level. And you could consider providing privacy in a very specific context. But then that might limit interoperability with other dApps. So there are various options how you can like solve privacy, but they all come with various challenges. And one thing that also is useful to keep in mind is that blockchains tend to be decentralized or are decentralized or like aspire to be decentralized, right, as much as they can. And when we try to solve for privacy, ideally, we do not want to bring in elements of centralization. So I guess that's what I have to say to that.
Hey, Casey, a couple more things that I'll add. So while we are looking at what privacy protocols make sense for Coinbase, we already heard a lot of folks earlier today who talked about different protocols that already exist. In the interim, I think our focus has also been on user education, both outside, externally to our customers, as well as internally within Coinbase. Again, forums like this, we're also ensuring that we have appropriate privacy policies, appropriate disclosures, and with the release of Base, which is our L2 network, and more developers who are developing dApp products on Base, it becomes more important that the developer documentation kind of calls through what does it mean to have personal data. And we try to kind of bucket it into 4 categories just for being really simplistic so that our engineers and our product teams can understand that just because the data is on chain and it's available, it does not exclude from it becoming personal. So we would have to evaluate on a case-by-case basis on whether it's personal or not, because if it is personal, then these privacy regulations become applicable.
And how do you go about that? It really is a case-by-case basis, so that sounds time-consuming and difficult.
So that's where there are multiple like data discovery solutions where it's not just identifying your traditional what personal PII or personal data, but it's also looking for other elements where by means of association could become personal. We also evaluate smart contracts that Coinbase is developing to see, hey, is there or there isn't any personal data that is getting processed via those smart contracts. Also including reviews of like the different data types that can be posted on chain. So until we have more clear guidance on, like from a regulatory point of view, until there's more clear guidance on how some of these basic privacy requirements will fit on a blockchain, companies like Coinbase have to ensure that we are doing something that can be rolled forward easily, because once the data is on chain, it's there for forever.
And you mentioned regulation. Looking ahead, I mean, what kind of policy or legislative proposals might impact some of this stuff in the future? How are you thinking about that? It sounds like there's a lot of gaps. What gaps exist? Are you seeing progress in any way?
As I said, at least as of today, there aren't any blockchain-centric privacy regulations. They're all Web 2. There are some elements which have, EU recently released the EU AI Act, so which talks about which has more guidance around use of AI models and especially use of personal data in AI models. I'm hoping that more and more regulations start to, at least the regulations which are going for a revamp are considering blockchain and catering to a blockchain community.
And Shashank, I'm curious to hear from you. What regulatory gaps exist? What challenges do these create?
And Casey, just for full transparency, neither Shashank nor me, we're not lawyers, so we're just folks who are trying to work with our legal team to ensure that whatever the regulation is, how can we technically implement it, evaluating technical feasibility of what does privacy mean on chain. So.
Yeah. I don't think I have more to add to that, really.
I guess in terms of, you mentioned some scenarios. What are the challenges? And, are you limited in what you can implement based on the current regulatory environment?
So I was talking to somebody earlier, and I said, privacy on chain is really a wide spectrum. One end of the spectrum is like your regulators and agencies who want more traceability, who want more transparency, and the other end is a customer who wants to ensure that their data is private. I know it's only a dream right now that someday, cryptocurrency is going to be equivalent to fiat. But even now, if I'm able to easily trace transactions on chain, say I use crypto to buy something in a grocery store, then I went to a doctor, I made my purchase, all that information is on chain. And as I said, there are a lot of technologies like this Arkham technology, which essentially where you can enter a wallet address and it's not hard to kind of trace a transaction all the way through. So that's where companies have to take a stance on where are we in the spectrum, and our technical solutions have to support that.
Definitely. We have a few minutes left. I want to kind of get back to Coinbase as the focus. What can you tell us about what you're working on? What are you excited about in the privacy Web3 space? How are you guys thinking about solving some of these issues?
Shashank, do you want to talk more about Base?
Yeah. So Base launched probably about a year ago, right? And we have started to think about privacy on Base. Like I said, you can bring privacy in many different ways, and there are challenges associated with that. So we want to have a long-term strategy and a short-term strategy of how to address privacy. So we are keeping all the options open at the moment. And we'll see which one provides the right balance, basically, between, there are several entities involved here, and we would have to strike the right balance for a privacy solution to be successful.
And Asha, just forward-looking, what are you excited about?
So Coinbase as a company, we offer 3 different types of products, if you were to say. So consumer products are like your traditional Coinbase.com, where users can go interact on dApps, purchase crypto. We also have institutional products where institutions who have to transact on crypto use our products. And the last is what developer products, which is what Shashank mentioned. Base is our L2 network, where we're seeing an exponential growth in developers who are developing dApp products, and that's the hardest problem to solve. Saying how, if there is a developer who's developed a dApp and the consumer's personal data gets exposed for some reason, it's not. While Base is a very decentralized product, at the end of the day, it would still come back to Coinbase saying, hey, I provided my data on Base to this dApp and my data was exposed. So how are we going to protect our customers in an environment where the data is so decentralized? It's a hard problem to solve, and that's where our focus is on right now.
Definitely, and really focusing on users. Both of you actually, what should users understand when interacting on chain in terms of privacy? I know we talked a little bit about some of the misconceptions that exist, but what are your best practices, your best advice?
As I mentioned, it's just having the awareness that once the information is there on the chain, it's going to stay forever. I know there are products that we offer, like on-chain verify, where somebody was talking about it earlier, where you can use the information that you were KYC'd by Coinbase and use it attestation across other entities. So in that instance, their information is, they are voluntarily providing the information that they were KYC verified by Coinbase. Our effort is to ensure that when they're customers provide the information, they have knowledge of what it actually means. Right now, it's primarily through, as I said, sessions like this, more awareness to our customers in terms of live pop-ups with information on what that means. So that's essentially how we're trying to tackle it.
Yeah, lots of discussions about attestations today for sure. Shashank, what about you? What are some of the best practices? What should users be aware of?
Yeah, so there is of course some standard stuff out there. Your wallet, everything on the blockchain is public, so like all your wallet activity can easily be tracked, can even be tracked back to an actual person. So be careful about how you transact online. Yeah, and there is also there's many other ways in which you could kind of reveal information about you. Not just your on-chain activity, but the way you ramp onto an blockchain, the way you offboard from a blockchain, how you bridge your assets, so there is so many different things that people do on a chain, the kind of protocols they participate in, and if they use crypto for real world transactions, that could also reveal information about them if they use crypto to buy coffee at a coffee shop, right? So they have to be like very careful. All of this information is being recorded on the chain, so they have to be very careful on the kind of on-chain activity they choose to participate in.
And sorry, just to add to, this is probably getting more into the security space, but there is actually an increase in the number of phishing attacks that we've seen, especially since the onset of use of blockchain. Like there's more awareness on which wallets have how much dollar amount, and so they're easy targets. So just providing more awareness on like these phishing attacks.
Yeah, definitely. This session is called Coinbase's Long View. We have 30 seconds left. Any final thoughts?
Blockchain is here to stay. It's just on everybody else to see how, like, especially for our regulations, to see how can we make this more, what do you say? I wouldn't say legitimate, but like, how do we make this so that it's easier to demonstrate to everyone that, blockchain is not for illegal activity. There's a ton of good that's coming out from this. How do we make this more regulated?
Shashank, final thoughts?
On-chain privacy is very, very important, but also needs to be solved in the right way. And we are working on it and really excited about it.
Great. Thank you both so much. Shashank, we'll let you get back to your team, but we appreciate you joining us virtually.
Thanks, Casey.